Conversations across time. Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Conversations across time. 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 Conversations across.
Good evening and welcome to Conversations Across Time. Tonight, we are joined by, traveling across time, we are joined by President Richard Nixon, 37th President of the United States. He was also a senator from California and also a congressman from California before ascending to the presidency. Most people, when they think of Richard Nixon, they think only of Watergate and they don't think of the accomplishments of Nixon. And in fact, in light of what is going on in the country today, Richard Nixon almost seems like a choir boy when you compare him to former President Trump. So I welcome you, President Nixon, and look forward to hearing what you have to say about the current events that are taking place.
Good evening. I have to do this.
And we are also joined by Senator Sam Ervin. Sam Ervin was a senator from North Carolina, who is, again, most notably associated with his investigation that led to the resignation of Richard Nixon. But Sam Ervin, before that, had a long history. He was a senator from the South. Of course, he was from North Carolina. And he was considered the most prolific and outspoken, or the most prolific and spokesperson for the segregationist viewpoint. And also he spoke out and also investigated Senator Joseph McCarthy. And that investigation, as you know, led to Senator Joseph McCarthy being held in disgrace. So welcome, Senator Ervin.
I'm nothing but just a poor old country lawyer.
Yes, and you were very, very disarming over the years as portraying yourself as a poor country lawyer.
But that's all I am, Miss Crawford.
Well, your humility is refreshing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yes, Sam, that was a good act you always put on. The poor old country boy taking on the president of the United States. Now, sure worked for you publicity-wise, but I know you to be a hardcore sick Jim Crow segregationist Dixiecrat, and you oppose the Equal Rights Amendment. I mean, you were a hero to liberals, but I know we all now know your real story, Sam. Don't pull that trick on.
I'm just a constitutionalist, just like some of the old boys that are in the Senate now.
Well, I want to ask you, Senator Ervin and President Nixon, we are met with a new type of leadership, a new type of leadership in the White House. This series is called Meshugas at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Now, we know that by the time that this show airs, thank God, Donald Trump will no longer be the resident of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. But I'd like us to talk about what has happened to the United States and is there such a thing as American exceptionalism as a result of Donald Trump's term as president?
Well, I always was brought up with the idea of American exceptionalism, especially after the Second World War, because us going against both communist China and the Soviet Union. But those two regimes are old. Well, the Soviet Union is no more, and China is now just an authoritarian state. And from the looks of Trump, we're not so exceptional anymore. We are capable, just as Russia and just as China being an authoritarian state. And I'm afraid I've helped move that along with my Southern strategy, trying to rile up the racist white vote instead of trying to bring the country together according to race. I bear some responsibility for that.
The Southern strategy for our audience, most of our audience knows when we talk about the Southern strategy, what we're talking about, but that has to do with the Democrats as a result of the presidency of Lyndon Johnson and the civil rights enactments and the voting rights legislation and the various programs that he brought in. Lyndon Johnson made the statement that the Democrats had lost the South for a generation. Well, it's turned out to be more than a generation. But the Southern strategy, of course, is that in order for a Republican to win in the White House, that they needed to align themselves with those Southern white voters who heretofore had been called, up until that time, Dixiecrats.
Yeah, I was a Dixiecrat, and one of the reasons I decided not to run for my last term was I didn't think I could win as a Democrat. I would have to have changed parties like some of my colleagues did, like my buddy Strom Thurmond, who believed in all the segregationist ideals that I had. So the Southern strategy was to turn the South away from the Democratic Party and use the racist policies to ensure those states would continue to be Republican. And that's pretty much how it's been. And when I look now at this last election, I'm totally shocked and stunned that 2 Democrats won the 2 seats in Georgia. It boggles my mind as a segregationist.
Yes, it's true, Sam. I mean, it's not the old South. It's not your South. It's not the South I won so handily in '72. People of color are asserting themselves politically, and I must say that white people have got to adjust to that reality.
Well, I mean, President Nixon, you allude to something that of course, the census projections show that by the year 2044, the white race will no longer be in the majority in this country. And I believe that is the fuel that is driving a lot of what is going on in this country, and allowed Donald Trump to come to power.
That is true. That is true. And don't be too fooled by his so-called populist talk. I mean, he's a rich kid. He wants to stay a rich kid, and he has no respect at all for those people voting for him, especially the ones that were stampeding all over the Capitol, not saying that they were low class. I mean, he can welcome their votes, he can encourage their violence, but he wouldn't want them in any of his golf clubs.
That's for sure, President Nixon. But I mean, you were kind of the antithesis of him. You grew up in a totally kind of different environment. You weren't a spoiled little rich boy like he was. You didn't inherit a pappy's money, and yet you both tried to become autocratic presidents. Now you did a lot more than Mr. Trump, because you had an idea of what government could and should do. But in terms of authoritarian tendencies, it's amazing you both came to a similar point from different backgrounds.
That is true. I had authoritarian tendencies. Like, I just hole up in the White House, in the Oval Office, and do my old contact, try to run the government through Haldeman, Ehrlichman, and Dean. But
President Nixon, I tend to, for the times that you have been on this show, I have always made it, it's a matter of importance to me that we talk about the fact that even though you had autocratic tendencies, you were responsible for desegregating the schools in the South.
True.
You were.
I never forgave you for that either, President Nixon.
I gotta do what I gotta do, Sam.
Okay.
No, please live with it.
I got even with you.
Yes, you did. You certainly did with the Watergate investigation. But you also established the EPA in 1976.
That is true.
You worked towards this country becoming energy self-sufficient.
I had to, with the OPEC oil crisis, our country had to be more self-sufficient with energy. I mean, foreign sources of oil, foreign countries controlling our oil supply. I mean, it's just a real national security risk. We can't have that.
I mean, I say all of that because even with your autocratic tendencies, we can, and I've just ticked off a few of the things that you were credited with having done during your administration.
I also,
you were a crook.
But I'm not a traitor.
You were a crook, but not a traitor. And I suppose that if we had to trade off, we would certainly be more inclined to be permissive of a crook and more understanding of a crook than we are of a traitor. As I said, this show is being aired after the events of January 6, 2021, when followers of Donald Trump stormed the Capitol. And they were incited to do so, encouraged to do so by the Meshugas, who was the president of the United States.
Yes, and you know what he did afterwards? He said, I will walk with you. And he talked all about that, being one of them. He went right into the White House and saw it all on TV. I mean, it was just a big TV show for him. That's all he understands. He thinks that's how you govern, by putting out a big TV show. And that, I was in the House, I worked in the Senate, I was vice president, I ran for president 3 times, and TV is not how you govern.
The thing that your President Trump did was he invaded the people's house, the hollow ground of the Senate and the hollow ground of the House of Representatives. And that is unconscionable, whether you are a left winger, a right winger, a centrist. It's unconscionable, and there has to be hearings, just like we had the Senate Select Committee to investigate Watergate. You got to have hearings to investigate him and the people that enabled him and the people that backed him. And from what I could see, there was planning. It wasn't just a spontaneous demonstration that came out of the blue. It seemed to be planned. From what I can see, there seemed to be a withholding of troops and people to police the area, and that has to come from the president and the Defense Department. We all know that served in government. So it has to be investigated, and the people responsible, because I'm a constitutionalist, have to be held accountable.
I agree, Sam. I agree wholeheartedly. You know, the troubles I have with Watergate, I never had the idea of having a howling mob stampede through the Capitol. I had my problems with Congress, but I still respected it. I never had the idea of a howling mob wanting to kill members of Congress, senators, and a police officer. I mean, this was a faction for law and order, and back to blue, respect the police. And what do they do? They kill a police officer.
I guess the blue lives don't matter when they kill them.
That's a slogan. You can't take that slogan seriously.
Well, no, but one of the Trumpian slogans is, how could you talk about Black Lives Matter when you don't talk about the police? And I'm saying that they killed the policeman over in Capitol Hill, and it doesn't seem to bother them. But I have to give President Nixon credit because during the protests, and they had the hard hats and the Vietnamese anti-war protesters. But he met with the protesters. He tried to calm the situation down. So I have to give the President Nixon his due for that.
I did that. There was this big moratorium in Washington. 100,000 protesters came at the ellipse to protest the Vietnam War. I did speak with them. Can you imagine Trump trying to speak with the Black Lives Matter people? No way.
But I must say that what you describe, President Nixon, is what we consider statesman behavior. That's statesman-like behavior, to meet with the opposition, with their leaders, even if it's just paying lip service. It is a gesture which indicates that you are giving them an opportunity to air their grievances. There is something that I am struck by, and that is with the protests that happened on January 6th, and the way that there seemed to be assistance given to the protesters. They seem to have a plan. They certainly, some of them were discovered to have the schemata of the White House tunnels and where specific offices were located, offices that were not readily available to the public. Representative James Clyburn, who's the majority whip, had an office on the first floor, which has his name over it, and it says Majority Whip Representative Clyburn. But that is not really where he works from. He works from a location on the third floor, which these protesters, they weren't protesters, they were rioters. These rioters went directly to the office where he works. So that would indicate to me that there was some information that was given that would not be readily available to an ordinary citizen.
I don't know about you, Dick. I had trouble finding my own office sometime.
That's true.
So how did they have the wherewithal to get around the Capitol with such easiness?
You have to understand that for time immemorial in this country, there's always been this link between the white supremacists and law enforcement agencies. Like police forces have their origins in the slave patrols who would be out on the loose trying to hunt down runaway slaves. And mark my words, if these maniacs, these rioters, please don't dignify them with the title of protesters.
Yes, I agree. I agree, President Nixon.
The insurrectionists, the seditionists.
And if these people were African American or left wing,
they'd have been
shot. My words, the police would have massacred them.
They'd have been shot. Well,
that's the law. That's the definition of law and order.
The insurrectionists, and they want to tear down the government. And the thing is that as much as my differences were with the liberals, the liberals liked me after Watergate, but I was a segregationist. But the difference was we all believed in the institution. We believed in the rule of law. We believed in our differences could be settled by compromise. These people have conspiratorial theories that I don't even understand. QAnon, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like the blood libel theories that I used to hear from Hitler.
I mean, QAnon, what the hell is that? I mean, it's become like a religion. I,
You know, one of the bedrocks of our government and of our country is freedom of speech.
mm-hmm.
But freedom of speech has limits.
You can't institute sedition. I mean,
That's right.
and I know that, you know, I'm a constitutionalist. I know the 14th Amendment, and the 14th Amendment says, because we passed it after the Civil War, because we don't want some of the Confederate legislators to get power again. So the 14th Amendment says if you commit treason or sedition against the government of the United States or advocate it, you can't hold public office again. It's the third or fourth paragraph in the 14th Amendment.
Yeah, but that's the question. I have to say it, conservatives and Republicans and white people have enormous privilege. I mean, they'll just, how much was it? 6 senators and 126 House members. They went along with Trump's idea of voter fraud and the election was stolen, and even the insurrection, this rampage. But are they going to lose their jobs? Are they going to face president? No, they're going to get finger wagged and get reelected. That's the way it's always been.
President Nixon, you had more of a claim to protest an election in 1960 when you lost to Senator Kennedy than the Trump man has.
I agree.
The rumor was that Matt Daley of Chicago and the mafia stuffed the ballot boxes in Illinois to give you that state. So you were told by some of your far right wing advisors to protest the election, but you said that wouldn't be good for the country, and you broke down. I mean, Senator Gore, Vice President Gore at the time, when he was ruled not to be president by your Supreme Court, he also was gracious enough. So those elections were more in doubt than this election. That man got his butt kicked.
I agree.
But that again is what we call statesman behavior. That's statesman-like behavior.
Of course, they have a little bit of class. They have a little bit of common understanding of the rule of law and the Constitution, and they believe in the institutions of the government.
Well, about the Republican Party, I'm afraid, it's not the same Republican Party I was in. It's not even Barry Goldwater's party. I mean, the idea of respecting the other side, even though you disagree with them, those days are long gone, Sam. It's not our Republican Party anymore.
So let's talk about that. What do you see the Republican Party as surviving the administration of Donald Trump?
I don't know. Unless we eliminate the Trump element, like McConnell's trying to do at least, the Republican Party is dead. I knew I played the race card a few times, but I wouldn't want to be near this Republican Party. It's not my party. I don't want to be associated with it in this life or the afterlife.
I don't think that the Republican Party can survive if they keep the infidelity. I mean, the fidelity, not the infidelity. The president's the infidelity, but
He's good at it.
But I don't think they can survive because he doesn't want a political party. He wants a cult that follows him blindly, and he doesn't even believe in elections. So if you don't have elections, if you don't have the ballot box, then why do you need political parties? There's no contest. So if he had his way, would outlaw all the political parties, and he would give another name to his own party. We'll call it the Trumpocrats or the Crappycrats or something like that.
And this is a guy who had everything handed to him. Always had his father trying to bail him out of everything. Bring them out of the drive, bring them out of casinos, get them into the Wharton School.
I want to lay that myth to rest. Donald Trump did not graduate from the Wharton School.
Mhm.
He did not. And the fact that so many people repeat that is so disturbing to me, and as it should be disturbing to graduates of the Wharton School, and it should be disturbing to University of Pennsylvania.
Well,
He took courses as an undergraduate at the Wharton Business School, but he was not a graduate of the Wharton School of Business.
Right. His own professor said to him, and I quote, "The dumbest goddamn student I ever had."
well, he's not the brightest bulb in the kitchen. That's for sure.
But I think what we are getting to is probably the crux of the problem of Donald Trump, and I want us to hold on to that so that we can discuss it next week. And that is, when you have someone who is a fraud from the get-go, that everything about him is fraudulent, that he makes up, first of all, I think his sister has been said, the sister that was a judge, a federal court judge, has been said that she did his tests for him, that there were students that took tests for him. So when you have someone who starts out down this precipitous path of having things handed to them that they have not deserved, what can you expect from that? What kind of human being does that produce?
Well, the story about Trump is that his father always told him he had to win at everything, and loser is the worst thing you could be.
Well, listen, let us talk about next week. Let us come back and talk about whether or not we feel our country has been so permanently damaged from the administration of Donald Trump, and how did we get there? How did this happen? We are on this show. We have talked in the past about comparisons between Trump and Adolf Hitler, and I think it's appropriate. I know it sounds like I'm beating on a drum, but that's something that we need to come back to. We need to talk about that. So this has been Conversations Across Time. We will see you next week. We will pick up this discussion about Meshugas at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Thank you and good night.
Conversation across town. 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 Conversation across